Evening everybody. So after a long period of time, I could not do a video. So today, I just thought of talking about the background of introducing the Soulbury Constitution. Actually, in Sri Lanka, the Donamore period runs from 1931 to 1947. So during this period, the Donamore government system introduced several proposals that provided a good training for Sri Lankans for a future Westminster system of government. In this background, our people, the Sri Lankans, got a very good experience regarding a cabinet system of government. So, what happened was that the Donamore government system was not uh, suitable for ruling a country because uh, it did not promote a political party system, because in the parliament there were no governing party and opposition party. Under executive committee systems, all the people, all the members of the parliaments were divided into 7 committees. There were no governing party and opposition party. So this system actually was not suitable for ruling a democratic country, because there should be political parties that express the different views and interests of the people. But the Donamore government reform created a platform for establishing a future political party system, mainly because under Donamore, the universal franchise was introduced. So, under universal franchise, you can't organize electorates, you can't make the people prepared for an election without political parties. The parties are the most active organizations or groups that work for mobilizing the people for the political process, in the political process. So therefore, 1935 Lanka Samaj Party, 1941 the Communist Party, then after that United National Party in 1947, then after that Sri Lanka Freedom Party in 1950s. So these political parties gradually emerged mainly due to the influence of Donamore reforms. Now during this period, Donamore ministers, the board of ministers also made a request from British government through the ministers' bill that a new government reform should be introduced to Sri Lanka, which is a cabinet system of government. So, considering all these, actually British Parliament passed some bills for granting the freedom for Sri Lanka. So they had already decided to grant freedom for India. At the same time, they decided that they should grant freedom for Sri Lanka as well, while introducing the Soulbury Constitution. So accordingly, they passed some acts in the British Parliament, and they decided to grant freedom for this country. Accordingly, 1948 Sri Lanka got the independence. So we call it a kind of a dominion state of freedom or independence. So dominion freedom in the sense, uh, actually it's not a full freedom. It's not a full freedom because in Sinhala we call it Yatat Rajya Nidahasa. Dominion states still recognize the British king or queen as their leader, state leader. So accordingly, British queen was still the head of the state in Sri Lanka under Soulbury reform. Accordingly, we were introduced a cabinet system of government. It was not a full freedom, it was a dominion state of freedom, which means that the Still, the British Privy Council was the final court of appeal in Sri Lanka. British Queen was the head of the state in Sri Lanka. So, due to these factors, Sri Lanka was, and also British Parliament had powers to make laws regarding Sri Lanka in response to the request made by our parliament. So, due to these features, due to these provisions, still Sri Lanka was not a fully independent and free country. So, this is what happened under British Soulbury Constitution. This is what happened under Soulbury Constitution. Accordingly, children, they introduced a cabinet system of government. Earlier, under Donomore, we were not introduced a cabinet system of government because the political party system or necessary requirement for introducing a political party system was not there in Sri Lanka. That is why they introduced this system for us. So, under Soulbury, Prime Minister and Cabinet, the Parliament, the legislature was known as the Parliament. Parliament consisted of three major institutions. One is House of Representatives, and the other was the Senate, and the other was the Governor General. Earlier we called him Governor, but now we call him Governor General. So these are the three. These are the three major institutions in Soulbury Parliament, and also there were some other important provisions. One is for the provisions for safeguarding minority rights. There were five major provisions for safeguarding minority rights. One was Article 29.2. Other one was electing or nominating 5 members for the House of Representatives, and the other one was nominating 15 members for the Senate, and the multi-member electorates and public service and judicial service commission. These were the 5 provisions for safeguarding minority rights under Soulbury Constitution. So in addition to that, there were so many other proposals of this, Governor General and several other things in this government system. Now, first, if you take the parliament, actually the first parliament consisted of, first House of Representatives comprised of 101 members, out of which 95 were elected from 89 electorates and 6 members were nominated. 6 members were nominated. These 6 members were nominated by Governor General to represent the minority groups who had not obtained enough representation in the parliament. So accordingly, the House of Representatives consisted of 101 members, but this number increased after 1959 because with the increase of the population, the number of members in the House of Representatives also increased. Accordingly, after 1959, the number of members in the House of Representatives was increasing to 151, and again 6 members were nominated, altogether 157. Senate was actually the Senate was the second chamber. In England or the Great Britain, the second chamber or second house, second chamber of the Parliament was known as House of Lords. Okay, most of the colonial countries, the British colonial, most of the British colonies have introduced this second chamber or the house, the upper house of the Parliament. So in Sri Lanka, they introduced the Senate. In America also they have the Senate. For Sri Lanka also they introduced the Senate. This Soulbury Senate consisted of 30 members, out of which 15 were nominated by Governor General to represent the minorities as well as the intellectuals in the country, and the other 15 were elected from the House of Representatives, the members of the House of Representatives, and through their votes according to their representation in the House of Representatives under STV method of simple majority system. So this is how the composition. Then House of Representatives, the term of office was 5 years, whereas the Senate had the 6 years term, where after every 2 years, one third of members were elected newly. So this is how it happened in the Senate. So the Soulbury Parliament as a whole was not a sovereign institution. The sovereignty power was not totally vested on Parliament. Sovereignty was not vested in Soulbury Parliament. Usually, you know that the Westminster model of government was introduced by the Great Britain. Their British Parliament was called the Westminster Parliament, and it had full powers, full sovereignty power on all the legislative affairs. Usually, a Westminster Parliament can make or unmake any laws. A Westminster Parliament can make any laws, and at the same time, those laws are not subject to the judicial review, okay, by any court in the country. So that's why A.V. Dicey says that the Westminster Parliament can do anything except converting a male into female and female into male. So that much of a powerful institution is the Westminster Parliament. But Soulbury Parliament was not that much powerful and did not have such a sovereignty power, because Soulbury Parliament powers had been restricted by the Article 29.2. It says that the Parliament cannot make laws which impose restrictions on any ethnic or religious groups, which provide special privileges for any ethnic or religious groups, discriminating the other groups, and also it can't make laws which impose some which changes some constitutions of the religious institutions. So these kind of barriers and the restrictions had been made on the Soulbury Parliament in lawmaking. Therefore, it was not at all a sovereign institution. So it was highly criticized that the Parliament's powers had been restricted by the Soulbury Constitution. At the same time, governor had been made the part of the Parliament because his assent was essential for making a law. His assent was essential for making a bill a law. So therefore, traditionally governor as a whole, he never rejected to pass a law. He assented. He gave his assent for passing a bill as a tradition, but he had powers because he was the representative of the British government. So he had the powers to give his assent, and if he wanted, he could have refrained from giving his assent regarding a bill. So therefore, the Parliament's powers had been restricted by the governor's final powers to give final assents for bills. And also, the Constitution directly does not say that the Supreme Court had judiciary review power, but in 1960s there was a case related to the sabotage against the government. There the Supreme Court said between the Constitution that the Soulbury Supreme Court had powers to review the laws made by the Soulbury Parliament, which means that if the Soulbury Parliament made the law which is against the Constitution, the Supreme Court can reject it or declare it null and void. So accordingly, again the Parliament's power were restricted. And the British Parliament had powers to make laws regarding Sri Lanka if you make a request. Okay, so due to all these matters, Soulbury Parliament was not at all an sovereign, independent institution. It had executive power, it had legislative powers, but they were enjoyed with a lot of restrictions due to these whole limitations imposed in it by the Constitution. Okay, and also the House of Representatives had to get the approval of the Senate for passing a bill. So within the parliament, one house power is controlled by the other. So due to all these things, Salisbury Parliament did not have sovereignty power at all. Okay, then yeah, we have to talk about the Governor General. Governor General was the nominal executive. Traditionally, a nominal executive have powers, as the head of the state. He had a lot of ceremonial powers. He had a lot of executive, legislative, judicial powers. All these powers he had to uh, exercise under the address of the Prime Minister and Cabinet. He was appointed by the British Queen under the address of Sri Lankan Prime Minister, and removal could also be done in the same way by the British Queen under the address of Sri Lankan Prime Minister. Okay, uh, but Governor General also had several powers, that discretionary powers that he could exercise on his own will. There were four main governor generals under Soulbury reforms. The first one was the monk Mason Moore. Second one was Lord Soulbury. Third one was the Oliver Gunatilaka, and the fourth one was William Gopala. So out of all these four governors actually had to work under the address of both British Queen as well as Sri Lankan Prime Minister. And we have heard that Sir Oliver Gunatilaka was the most notorious, stubborn character out of all these four people. And governor was the representative of British government in Sri Lanka. He had the powers to summon, prorogue and dissolve the parliament, address the inaugural session of the parliament, presenting the policy manifesto of the policy statement of the government. The main executive task he had was to appoint the prime minister. The winning party leader was appointed as the prime minister, and under prime minister's address he appointed the ministers. Okay, judiciary powers he had to appoint the higher Supreme Court judges. So, and also the other ceremonial powers like participating in national festivals, representing Sri Lanka in international society, accrediting the ambassadors and philanthropists. All these powers were there with the government. So under Soulbury, these are the most important things you have to remember. So in addition to that, there were some other provisions for safeguarding minorities' rights. This is the most important last part of Soulbury. Usually you get questions from minority rights provisions. Usually a constitution in a country should have a full article on fundamental rights. Fundamental rights in the sense the rights given for the whole citizens of the country, citizens and the other people. But here Soulbury included only an article on minority rights. Minority rights, the reasons for adding minority rights article, some says that because the British themselves were a minority in Sri Lanka, that's why they have given these minority rights articles in the constitution. So they wanted to ensure their own protection. They don't think that is not because they thought about Sri Lankan Muslims and Tamils and Burghers and all. So however, Article 29(2), as I told you, says that the parliament cannot make any laws which impose some restrictions and give some special privileges for one ethnic group, discriminating others. That is Article 29(2). It restricts the lawmaking powers of the parliament. And the other provisions was the nominating 6 members for the House of Representatives. So there, after elections, the minority parties which had obtained less representation in the parliaments were given, minority groups actually were given an opportunity to nominate 5 members. The Governor General nominated 5 members under the address of Prime Minister for representing these minority groups who had obtained less representation in the parliament. Then the Senate also consider 50 members who are from minority groups, and they were also appointed to represent the minorities. Then the other one was the multi-member electorates. Actually, multi-member electorates were introduced now. The usually under simple majority system, only one member, the we call it the first past the post system, a member who get the highest number of votes within an electorate was elected to the parliament. It's called simple majority system. But if there are two main ethnic groups in a electorates, electing a one member from one ethnic group was a huge disadvantage for the other ethnic group. So therefore Kadugannawa, Badulla, Balangola, Ambalangola, Balapitiya, Colombo Central. These areas were named as multi-member electorates. Later on, due to the increase of the Muslim population in the country, Apurana, Batikalo, Mutur, Colombo South, they were also named as multi-member electorates. So, in all these multi-member electorates, uh, one more than one members were elected to the parliament according to the population, according to the ethnic groups. Now, if you take Colombo Central, there were Muslim, Tamil, Sinhala. All three communities are densely populated in Colombo Central. Therefore, from all three ethnic groups, members were elected to the parliament. Uh, so accordingly, it was a great opportunity for minority members. They could cast their both votes either to a same member or two different members. That is how they had to cast their votes. That was also a very important provisions for safeguarding the rights of minorities. And the last one was Public Service and Judiciary Service Commission. That commission consisted of actually the Public Service and Judiciary Service Commission were very independent commissions. They were appointed for ensuring and safeguarding the independence of these two services. So, in appointing, removing, transferring, promoting minority members, they had to take a responsibility, and they had to ensure that no any political influence are made on the basis of their minority because of their ethnicity no influence are made. So therefore these two commissions also established for ensuring minority rights, and doing unnecessary political influence for these commissions were a punishable offense. So this is how the minority rights protection provisions were introduced under Soulbury Constitution. There are a lot of criticisms against this. In Sri Lanka, everything, whatever the things they introduce, our people make it ours. So what happened? The criticisms were mainly, though Article 29.2 was introduced, later on the government, the Sinhala only Act, that is the Citizenship Acts of the Indian and Pakistan citizens. So these kind of provisions restricted the language rights of the people in this country. Therefore, Article 29 was highly questioned later on. And if it was a very effective article, how could the Bandaranaike government introduce that single only language act the people of Kashmir? And also, nominating 6 members for House of Representatives and 15 members for Senate were also questioned because it was also highly questioned. The reason is that actually, though those members were appointed, they were all the friends of Prime Minister. So you can never expect a justice from them, because you can never expect a voice for the minorities from those members appointed, because they were friends of Prime Minister. They would never speak a word against the Prime Minister because they were the friends. So they wanted to get elected next time. Therefore, they were very careful not to criticize the Prime Minister and ask questions from him. So that was also another drawback of these minority rights provisions. And the Public Service Commission and Judicial Service Commissions were also highly criticized because they received a lot of political influences and they did not fulfill that expected aims of the people in the country. So accordingly, under Donomore reforms, the entire system, there were a lot of positive and negatives, and it was criticized later on for its drawbacks. However, it was the very first Westminster model of government introduced to Sri Lanka. Therefore, it was a turning point in Sri Lankan constitutional history. So I hope to do another broad analysis on 1972 constitution. Usually you get mix up these things when it comes to studies and all. You are always confused about this Donomore, Soulbury 72, 78. They are mixed up. That is how whenever you are studying, you face this problem. So therefore, just watch this video, just put your comments and subscribe my channel, and definitely I'll be adding another video very soon about 1972 constitution. Till then, good night, good luck, bye bye.